I'm just not smart enough. How many times have you thought that yourself? That you just aren't as smart as Bob or Alex in the class, who just gets maths, who's just amazing at English. They're just naturally talented. How many times have you said that to yourself? Some students can just get those straight grade A's and A stars. Maybe you aren't one of them. Maybe that's true, maybe not. I'm not going to talk about exam technique. I'm not going to talk about talent. I'm going to talk to you about a gruesome experiment from over 50 years ago. This experiment is going to highlight why this problem of I'm stupid doesn't actually exist. So if we go back in time.
Flashback.
1967, Elvis Presley married Priscilla. The Vietnam War protests were breaking out. More importantly for you guys, an American psychologist, Martin Seligman, did an experiment in 1967 as part of his wider study of depression. As with most experiments from back in the day, animals were involved. And animals involved in somewhat of a cruel nature. So viewer discretion is advised for the next part. Animals involved in this case were dogs. So what happened was Martin, the psychologist, he got a bunch of dogs and he chained them up and he effectively electrocuted them to the point where they received significant pain. Now, just to clarify, this electrocution is not talking about electrocution to death. We're talking about electrocuting to the point where they are receiving significant pain. As you would imagine, these dogs, they try to escape from their area of pain to an area where there's no pain. So over time, as Martin continued this experiment, this gruesome experiment, the dogs realized that they were chained down and they couldn't escape. So they accepted their fate and they said, hey, we might as well sit and accept the pain that we're in. Now, time passed and some months later, Martin decided to redo the experiment, but this time he unchained the dogs. Now, what do you think the dogs did when they were electrocuted? Do you think A, they ran away, B, they stayed there, C, they attacked Martin for doing this gruesome experiment? The answer is the dogs just stayed in place. And the reason for this is even though they weren't physically chained, they were mentally chained down. And that is something known as learned helplessness. And this is the concept and phenomena that you guys need to be aware of.
End of flashback.
Learned helplessness is where you feel you are mentally chained down even though your physical or other abilities aren't actually restricted. Now, you find this phenomena happening in schools. Maybe you did really badly in your year 1 test, or year 3 test, or year 5 test. You've been scoring low grades for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and you've now just come to believe that you are stupid. Even your teachers may have at one point, or your friends may have even said, you know what, you're just stupid.
Emotional, damn it!
That is not the way that you should be thinking, because you have become mentally chained. Maybe you did score poorly when you were younger. In your early years of school, maybe you consistently scored in the bottom half of the students, but perhaps there were reasons beyond your control. Perhaps you were sick. Perhaps you didn't have the right support in place, the right coaches or the right techniques. Now, I'm not going to talk about any of those points, but it's important that you're aware that there could have been mitigating circumstances back then. But what happens far too often is that even when you have the support available, a lot of students don't take up that opportunity because of what's happened to them in the past. You are being mentally shackled by your past, and that is learned helplessness. You have learned that you can't help yourself. Whereas in reality, the research shows that anyone can get the top grades. You, right there, my friend, can get an A star. Comment down below if you think you can get an A star. Let's get back to our experiment. So how did they get these dogs to unlearn? They had to physically pick up the dogs and move them out of the area of electrocution to an area where they weren't electrocuted. And the dogs soon realized that, hey, actually, we're not chained anymore. And then they relearned that they were not helpless. So they unlearned this phenomena. But the experiment was just based on dogs. You guys are remarkable human beings. So me just telling you, hopefully, is enough for you to break these mental shackles. Martin Seligman's study falls under something called classical conditioning, where if you do something repeatedly, you're more likely to repeat that behavior. If you're punished for something repeatedly, you're more likely to avoid that behavior. So it wasn't the shock itself, but the inability to control the shock which affected the mindset of the dogs. So I want you to realize there are things in your life that you can control with regards to your studies.
Something you can do to stay in control of your grades is by following these simple steps. Check out our videos on
how we got 100 A stars with students just like yourself, and another video on how to get the top grades and everything that you need to know about getting top grades over here. For more eye-opening videos like this and other cool experiments, click subscribe.